to reach 2030 agenda. By let's say SDGs by 2030. So therefore, the concept of this what you call decade of action for the 10-year period 2020-2023 came up to have accelerated, progression towards 2030 towards SDGs by 2030. Here, there are 3 levels, of interventions highlighted: the global level, local level, and people level, indicating that everyone has to contribute to these actions. And then there are 3 areas of action. It's highlighted under decade of action. First, we need more commitments because when you look at the commitment from the countries and the societies, the initial period of 2030 agenda or SDGs, it was not inadequate enough. So we need more commitments where we have to mobilize everyone everywhere. So that's one of the 3 actions. Second action is looking at more ambition because the present the development pathways adopted by the countries will not adequately support the sustainable development and SDG targets. So we need more ambition in the 10-year period. Now already we are in 2 years there. Out of 10, we have only 8 years more. So we need demand for urgency and ambition. Finally, we need more actions because we are lagging behind. So it's need new innovations and innovative solution to reach the target. So those are captured or highlighted in decade of action. So therefore, Stockholm+50 is looking at effectuating this decade of action, which was put forward by UN in 2020. Now we look at the local progression. Probably you are aware that Sri Lanka also positively responded to 2030 agenda as a signatory, and GSS, Government of Sri Lanka, enacted the Sustainable Development Act in 2019 as a policy framework, and then established the Sustainable Development Council as an institutional framework to provide the the guidance for all the stakeholders, especially the government, central government, national government, and local governments, council, local authorities, their agencies to adopt these sustainable development concepts. So with that, presently, national policy and strategy on sustainable development has been drafted, which has not been ratified by the cabinet yet. And mainstream of SDGs into national, provincial, and local authority level is being implemented with emphasis on localizing SDGs. So which is done by Sustainable Development Council. Presently, the agency framework has been identified where the localization of the targets and indicators were done, and then related agencies responsible and accountable have been identified, which are now being indicated on the institutional level, especially at the national government level. And then the local indicator framework has been developed now. Presently, the data availability in Sri Lanka will support only 100 indicators out of around 240. Presently, like December 2022-21, we have now 100 indicators. So we can see we have an issue regarding the data availability. So we need these indicators to monitor and also take action to move towards SDGs, achieving SDGs by 2030. But unfortunately, we don't have enough data to even identify some of the indicators, or majority of the indicators. So we have an issue here. So therefore, the need for looking of SDGs is important in the local context. And especially when you look at the progressions in Sri Lanka towards SDGs, SDG 17 SDGs, it's clear that the most of the lagging behind area, as highlighted earlier, are related to environmental aspects. So environmental, the 5 environmental related SDGs. So therefore, the Stockholm+50 conference, the concept is well applicable in local context, because we have the same issue what we see in the global context too. Very quickly, when you look at the other main, the convention we are following is the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. Although only one of the SDGs is climate action, SDG 13. The importance of climate action climate change become apparent that most of the other SDGs are linked to climate change or climate action. So therefore, we have the target set with Paris Agreement to reach or to hold the global warming below 2 degrees centigrade by 2100, or preferably limit to 1.5 degrees. That's the target set by this Paris Agreement, which was this national commitment, mitigation commitment came into 2020. The period of 10 years, 2020-2030, that's nationally defined contribution. So we have target here. Now, presently, we have that the average temperature has increased globally, global average temperature by 1.1 degrees. So we have very limited space to work with. So therefore, one of the key challenges within SDGs is climate action. So with that, we have this nationally determined contribution, put forward by Sri Lanka, which basically show the national commitment to the global action. It was initiated in 2015 as intended national determined contribution. Then it was communicated as NDCs in 2016. Then we had the readiness plan, to make ready everyone to the implementation of the NDCs from 2020. That's 2017 to 2019 readiness plan. Then with the implementation, the government has, with other governments, revised NDCs, updated NDCs in July 2021, which was resubmitted in September 2021, which highlighted 5 areas of intervention, the mitigation aspect in 6 sectors, energy, transport, industry, waste, agriculture, and forestry, then adaptation aspects in 9 sectors. Here the health is there, human settlement, water, agriculture, livestock, coastal and marine, fisheries, biodiversity, tourism and recreation. And then, of course, we have estimate the loss and damage, and then means of implementation. And importantly, in this time, this submission, the integrating SDGs to NDCs and other aspects like gender has been elaborated there. So therefore, these are the the national determined contribution which put forward by the government of Sri Lanka. The next aspect is basically the local, the responses, how these global agenda going into the local, the implementation and plans and so on. I just highlighting one of the most recent intervention, the National Environment Action Plan 2022-2030, which has been finalized, about to the printed now. So that is developed as a pathway to sustainable development in Sri Lanka. So therefore, we can see the environmental interventions are linked to sustainable development. That's in fact the Stockholm+50, the theme. So here there are 9 areas under which these national environment actions are being developed and will be implemented: air quality management, biodiversity, climate actions, conservation and of marine and coastal resources, land resources, holistic waste management, water resource management, environment management, cities and settlements, human settlement, and green industry. These are the thematic areas, and which include series of strategies, actions, key performance indicators, baseline targets, time frame, relevant SDG targets, indicative budget, implementation responsibility like lead agency and other key agencies are also highlighted there. So this is what we call the National Environment Action Plan, which will be implemented from this year. Then finally, I want to also touch upon this green recovery concept. Of course, came up with the COVID-19 impact on human development. So we can see that during the year 2020, first time in history, we have a downfall in the Human Development Index by a amount almost equivalent to 6 years of human development. which has never happened. So therefore, we can see, although the COVID-19 came as a health shock, it has evolved to an economic crisis, and which again lead into social and even political crisis. That's what we are experiencing now. So therefore, as I earlier deliberated, the importance of health on all the other aspects is clearly seen with the COVID-19. All these areas are highly integrated. You can't separate. Now that will indicate a complex situation where any interventions are integrated or interlinked with others, means the situation is very complex. But at the same time, it also provide opportunity, because if you do intervention in one area, that can have a positive impact. If you do it properly, it can have a positive impact on the other areas. So therefore, while it's a complex or task to attend, but also it will provide an opportunity to address these challenges in a more comprehensive manner, more integrated manner, so that we can build back better. So once you integrate the economy, the society, and environment together, then we talk about what we call green development or green recovery. So that green recovery does not mean only environment or only economy. It talk about the sustainability concepts together, shaping the development pathways beyond the crisis into an opportunity in achieving sustainable development goals. So here, the green word itself represents the importance of the environment. So therefore, Stockholm+50 is looking at how to accelerate the progression towards sustainable development goals, which is much needed for all the countries in the world, through environmental aspects. That doesn't mean we are not going to, we are not going to neglect others, but give emphasis on environment so that the SDGs can achieve in a best possible manner. So that basically what we want to highlight before going into present this leadership dialogue, to take your feedback. Like what we did earlier presentation, if you have any question, probably we can open up here. Otherwise, I ask Engineer Gamini Sennayak to come in and then explain this leadership dialogue. Thank you. Since we will have time to get your questions and so on within the, I think, group work breakout session, I will ask Engineer Gamini to present the next presentation, make the next presentation that's on the leadership dialogue. After that, also we can open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugatapala. Let me open my presentation. Just give me a second. Good morning. Hope you can see the screen. Can you see the presentation? Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. And also we'd like to, as said before, we'd like to thank you for joining this important session despite the prevalent situation of the country. In fact, we wanted to have a physical session with professionals. We were expecting about 50, but with all these difficulties, we are very happy that we have about 20 together with our team, and over 12 professionals are joining. Now, we have a very good understanding about the background and what this is all about and what we are supposed to do. Let me take you through this presentation, brief presentation, where I will present the 3 leadership dialogues, which means now the Stockholm event in early June, there will be high-level participation from all the countries around the world, member countries. And so there are 3 leadership dialogues. So for that, as said before, we are given a set of very standard set of questions for all countries and for all stakeholder categories. And also, along with that, there's another question specifically for the Stockholm+ event, what we expect after the event. So these are the 3 areas I will take you through. And also referring to Professor Samat, in fact, now here we take the approach what we call whole of government and whole of society. And today, this one is meant for the professionals. In fact, we have invited all the professional groups registered under Organization of Professional Association. There may be other organizations which are not registered or members of OPA, but all OPA members have been invited for this session. So thank you very much for your participation. And also, we believe that you being professionals, I think now we have consulted many different groups, state sector, provincial, local authorities, CSOs, academia, students, youth, and all these different groups. But we are quite certain that the response we are getting from this group will be very useful because you know what it is, and you are there, you are directly involved, some of you. So in that sense, I think your response would be very important. After this little presentation, we will divide ourselves into 3 groups. We have, I think, altogether about 12 participants. So 4 can join one group, depending on your interest of 3D leadership dialogue. Maybe your interest, maybe your expert area. So maybe you could make a very positive contribution. So that we will do after going through this. So these are the 3 areas of leadership dialogue. Starting with the first one, the healthy planet for prosperity for all. Yeah. So this is the first one, first leadership dialogues. For this, there are a set of questions, about 5 questions that I will present it to you in a minute. Then the second dialogue is based on the recovery, green recovery, inclusive recovery after the COVID pandemic. Then the third one, as Dr. Sugatapala mentioned, now, so we have not experienced a very significant progress in this sustainable development goals, particularly the environmental dimension, environmental elements, the goals of sustainable development. How can we accelerate? How can we accelerate the implementation of environmental dimension of sustainable development goals? So these are the 3 areas. Once we go through the questions, you will even have a better understanding of what kind of response they expect from us. So thereafter, you can decide which group you can fit into, or you can make a contribution. So let me go to the first one. So these are the 3 dialogue questions. So the dialogues, I will not go through it. And also, when we break into groups, one of us from our team will join you with the computer and help you to record your discussion and also help you to present it. Yeah. Okay. Now, and also there will be, if you need further the clarification discussion, we can do it when we break into group. So the first one is this healthy planet for the prosperity of all. So these are the 5 questions asked for us to ensure healthy planet and prosperity for all. Now, the first question is to understand the good practices and pathways. Yeah, of course, there could be many good practices, but what the organization want us to give our priorities, 2 or 3, maybe 2 or 3 good practices, which could ensure achieving the healthy planet for prosperity for all. How can we restore and regenerate a positive relationship with nature? List 2 or 3 good practices and pathways that you would like to see scaled up. That is important. So the good practices, maybe already you have, or you are suggesting, and more importantly, how can we scale it up to enable move to healthy planet? So that is the first question. And all these questions are, interrelated and built upon the previous one. Then the second question, now these good practices to be implemented, you need concrete actions. Yeah, what are the actions that you would like to take to scale up the change towards the healthy planet? If you have to scale up these best practices, what kind of actions you are suggesting? And also we know that certain actions, you need some support, the policy support. Maybe structures need to be in place, coordination mechanisms and things like that. So second part of that question, what are the policies and structures need to be in place for you to take such actions? Okay, then there are 2 questions, question number 3 and 4. If you take the question number 4 first, it is talking about the safeguarding the rights of people and the nature. Yeah, in a very broad sense, how can we safeguard the rights of people and nature, including, among others, people like indigenous people, local communities, environmental defenders, women, youth, and also more importantly, future generation. Yeah. So when we make policies and when we take certain action, we need to make sure that their rights are safeguarded. People's rights are safeguarded, then the nature's rights are safeguarded. So that is question number 4. Now, if you see question number 3, it is kind of a subset of question number 4. There we are focusing more on the marginalized and vulnerable groups. Whatever we do, to achieve, this kind of say actions, the policies, there will be a group which will either be negatively affected or they will not get the benefit out of it. So the question here is how can we ensure, how could marginalized and vulnerable groups benefit from policies and initiatives designed to restore more sustainable and resilient relation with the nature? Okay, so that is the question number 3. Then finally, it asks, okay, now when these things are in place, when implemented, how do we know that we are in the right direction? For that, we need indicators, we need matrices to measure the progress, to see that we are getting where we want to be. So that is the question number 5. So for this question 5, what we have done to support the discussion, group discussion, we have provided this kind of format so that when you are into the group discussion, our team member could support you putting your ideas here. So I'm not going to go through all these things. These formats have been given. Then the second leadership dialogue is the recovery from the COVID, green recovery and inclusive recovery. Okay. Now here, there are 6 questions. We have gone through this. All of us have experienced different experience. We are affected differently. We have responded differently. And so this is the reflection of our experience. So what is the first question? Number 1, what are the most promising sustainable and inclusive recovery practices currently being applied? Okay, so now here we are talking about the recovery from COVID. Most promising sustainable and inclusive recovery practices currently being adopted. by all these people, public, private, civil societies, individual level, community level, regional level, country level, and all that. Yeah. And then again, how can we scale them up? You know, there may be got a lot of promising practices which we have, introduced, so adapted. Either how can we maintain them or how can we improve them? How can we scale up? Yeah. Then the second question, likewise now, promising the best practices. There can be certain practices which are not very very good for this recovery. So here we have to identify the pre-existing practices need to be changed. Either you got to get rid of these bad practices, or you need to change to ensure inclusive and sustainable recovery. That is the question number 2. And also the idea here, now it is a global event and all these member countries will participate. So all these countries will have, best, the practices to share. So then the third question, how do we ensure that all countries and all communities, if you take within the country, all communities, and globally all countries, from opportunities stemming from sustainable and just transition, the green transition, green recovery, inclusive recovery, how can everyone get benefit? Yeah. Then question number 4 and 5, with the COVID, we know the industry sectors, most of the economic sectors were badly affected, mostly the industries. Of course, some industries had better opportunities, the new markets and new opportunities, but generally, a lot of industries had problems, their supply chain breakdowns and so on and so forth. Certain sectors are very badly affected. So the question number 4 is, how can we create better performing industries? So industries, they had, different way of, the managing, operating before COVID. With the COVID, we have realized that we cannot, go, not as business as usual. Now we need to change. Individuals need to change, the industry need to change. How can we create better performing industries? And also more importantly, how can we create better supply chains? Without the supply chains, industries cannot survive. So that how we can ensure that. Then also, now when you say industries, there are many different types of industries, manufacturing, the services, and so on and so forth. Here they want us to identify few critical sectors which need to be transformed. Yeah. When you say critical sectors, we need to justify why we say these are the critical sectors. So that is question number 4. Question number 5. Then these sectors, now once you identify these critical sectors, again, they like us to identify what are some of the commitments and responsible principles that need to be made by these key industrial sectors. The commitments, what are the commitments and the responsible principles? And also, not only the industries, the financing institutions, investment institution, it is an important part of the industry. Then finally, now with this transition, the green recovery, inclusive recovery, there are a lot of green jobs opportunities created. Yeah. So what are the decent, and not only the green, decent jobs? Yeah. So this decent word is mentioned in SDGs as well. So decent part is the social safeguard aspect of it. So what kind of green jobs are created? And also now for this transition, we may have to have new set of skills. Maybe from the academia level, certain changes need to be done. Then also the private sector, businesses, the commercial sectors need some new skills. And certainly the government also need to change, yeah, with this for this transition. So these are the things. So this is how this set of questions are formulated. So like I said before, here also we have provided this the format for you to make your response. Then let me come to the third one, that is the accelerating of environmental dimension of SDGs of Sustainable Development Goal during the decade of action. Decade of action is from 2020 to 2030. They also now we have almost completed 2 years. So remaining 8 years, how can we accelerate? Especially these environmental dimensions. What are those? Water and sanitation, sustainable consumption and production, climate change, life on earth, and life underwater. These are the 5 areas. So here also there are 6 questions. Again, these are interrelated. The first one, first question. Now we admit that we have not achieved what we are expected to achieve. Not only our country, most of the countries are lagging behind. So in country context, what are the challenges we are facing for not achieving this progress, expected progress? What are the biggest challenges we are facing in implementing commitment to 2030 agenda and also other environmental commitments? Yeah. Then once you identify the challenges, then we know what kind of the supporting environment, enabling environment we should have. So that is the second part of the question. These two are interlinked. Then, like the first, the previous questions, they like to understand for this the accelerating this implementation, what are the good practices and pathways? Again, this path would like to see scale up. Now it says, what are the good practices and pathways that you would like to see scale up to the accelerate the implementation of environmental dimension sustainable development in the context of the decade? So scale up, when you use the word scale up, so that means something that is already there, certain good practices. Or here even we can come up with even the suggestions if we can. Yeah. So then the third one, for us to have these good practices, the results, the maintain activities, then what kind of transformation is required in the governance system? And also there may be, need for certain changes in the legal systems for us to accelerate the implementation. That means long-term economic stability, ecological and social well-being. Then, and question number 4 is also very important. Now, in this regard, now we cannot work in isolation in silos. Now, public sector and the state sector need to identify their strengths and weaknesses and the synergetic effect they could create, when they get together. So here is talking about the public-private partnership. Yeah. What measures are needed to align public-private development finance, existing commitment and priorities? So that is question number 4. Then the 5 and 6 is now looking for external support. We know that the countries like ours cannot do all these things by using our own resources. So question number C is very specific. They ask what kind of capacity development we need for us to accelerate this, and also what kind of technologies you are looking for. Yeah. So then question number 5, in general, now we are getting a lot of support from UN agencies and other development agencies. What exactly, in broader terms, what kind of support you are expecting? Yeah. So that is question number 5. So when we get into group discussion, I think we can go through these questions again to have a better understanding. Again, we have provided formats like this. And there is another question at the end. So a lot of effort is going on all over the world, all countries following the same set of questions. And here in country also, we are now reaching out to different segment of the society. So with all this effort, it should not go waste at the end of it. And what kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm+50? Yeah. Again, we have given a format. So this is in brief what these questions are for us to respond. So with this, I will conclude my presentation, and thank you very much. So we have about 12, and you can, the organizers will take over from now onward to, supporting you to get into the different groups. So we expect now, since we have 12, we expect, say, equal number of participation in all three groups, so that we can have a good discussion. So we also join from our team, your groups. Dr. Shaman will be with the group 1, that is Healthy Planet for Prosperity for All. Sustainable Development Goals, Dr. Sugatapal will be there, and I will be with the group deliberating the COVID recovery from COVID. So thank you. Kevini, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sindhanaika. The breakout rooms are now open. There are 3 breakout rooms open based on the 3 dialogue questions. If you go to the bottom of your screen and click the breakout room, you can select which breakout room you would like to join. Thank you. Please note the breakout rooms are now open. If you would like to join a breakout room of your choice, please click on the icon below at the bottom of your Zoom tab and click on breakout rooms.
Participation is less for the leadership dialogue too. I think more can join there. Professor Dharmaratna, are you there? Miss Jayamanda? Hello, Miss Jayamanda, can you hear us? Ms. Jaimana, others join the breakout sessions.
Yeah.
Yes, others join the breakout sessions for the 3 leadership dialogues. You can select any of it. Leadership, you can go to the breakout session through the function there. Tevni, can you give
I'll
a
see.
guidance?
I'll try to get
Yes.
in. Yeah, I'll try. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank
There's
you.
an icon below at the bottom of your tab saying breakout room. If you click on that, then you can select which breakout room you'd like to join.
Theoni, until when we have the breakout sessions?
So Gandhi, it will be open for a further 22 minutes.
For further 22 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Group 1 is going to join in 2 minutes.
Okay.
I think Teuni is in group 3. I will see how they are.
Apologies for the delay. Some of the other breakout rooms are still discussing. We've given them a further 10 minutes to wrap up their discussion.
Group 1 is already finished. Teuni, they will join in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Only some of the group 2, some members want to leave early.
I see.
Can you ask the other group to finish it in maybe 5 minutes?
Okay, I will tell LD3 that only 5 minutes can be given.
So maybe we can start with group 2, right?
Yeah. Okay. By doing that, we can relieve them. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
This is the response for LDQ2. Huh?
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Sennaik.
Yeah. Let's see.
Teuni, did you announce they have 10 minutes? Otherwise, I was
No,
there in D1, they were just wrapping up. I can ask them to join the plenary since
I announced.
group 2.
I
Yeah.
put a broadcast message that it's closing now in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, there's a mistake here. Let me correct that. Today's 10th, no, not 11th. Yeah.
Tevani, doesn't it close automatically, the breakout rooms?
No, Sugandhi, I just closed it because we had to wait. Mr. Sennaga, everybody has returned from the breakout rooms. I think you can begin the LD2 discussion. Mr. Sennaga?
Yes, but Tevani, okay, let me see. Ola back, is it?
Yes, Mr. Sennaga.
Yes. Okay, okay. Then, since the member who is going to present leadership dialogue question 2 response, since he has to leave, shall we take this group first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Ashik, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Let me help you with slide movement. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm Ashik, President, Institute of Facilities Management, Sri Lanka. So we've been given a question number 2, that is around the COVID pandemic. So the question, do I need to read out the question also, Senanaika?
Please.
Okay, so first question is about what are the most promising, sustainable and inclusive recovery practices currently being applied by public, private and civil society groups at the individual community, and how could we scale them up? So this is this question is predominantly around pandemic or post-pandemic rather. So we have identified most promising sustainable practice. As you all know, during the COVID period, the hybrid working is something emphasized by many organizations due to travel restrictions. So everybody rediscovered this. Until now, most of the people were using Skype. Now Skype is hardly used. So other platform being predominantly used, thanks to the ICT technology. So there, in terms of the individual, it was really helpful working from home, hybrid working, and that enable less traveling for work, and overall there's a less carbon emission. And then from the community point of view, e-communication, e-commerce, so we hardly post letters, we hardly hand deliver letters and displayed posters. So it's all e-commerce, e-communication with the WhatsApp and social medias we've been using. So that again reduce, it has a direct impact to our energy and sustainability. And then from the city, regional, and country aspects, of course, all revolving around same theme, where you don't need to travel to overseas, or the regionally you don't need to travel. With these social platforms, it's reconnected, reunited, and you can make it more interactive. And even today's event is also one of the example of how we all reconnected despite the curfews in place in the country. So this is the promising sustainable and inclusive recovery practices done by all of these industries. Thank you. So we can move to next slide unless there's any questions.
Just give me a second to reduce this a bit. Okay. Okay, please go ahead. This is the scaling up part. Yes, yes, Sashi, please.
Yeah. So earlier we discussed the promising practices. Now, how are you going to scale them up? Even though this is being practiced, there are a lot of doubts, issues around these systems, whether to go overboard or whether to stop it. So that's why we want to highlight here. And as you know, not everybody have a good internet connection and good infrastructure to support, especially with this power cuts these days. So how would you able to connect to a meeting if there's a power cut? And I never experienced in the past with the power cuts. Now even you are losing the 3G 2D 3G connection, and internet is quite slow. Even you can't even talk to a person over the phone as well. So this is something I'm experiencing with the power cut. So that's again, it's a huge bottleneck to have this continuing the good practices what we've been doing so far, but how we can scale them up. So basically ICT infrastructure development is the key here. We have to identify all the blind spots with the support of telecommunication industry and the government. It's reunited and develop this infrastructure. And the community elements, there are a lot of doubts whether there will be hackers, crackers, or there will be an issue in compromising our data if you are working on different platforms. So creating awareness and giving an IT security awareness and all the firewalls features is a key for them to use without any doubt. And also we have to identify a key personnel who requires this working from home toolkit to be given, especially the state sector. They have a laptop, they're all using a desktop, and they have to come to office every time. And with pandemic or post-pandemic time, it's very difficult for them to work from home and offer services. So identify key individuals, provide those necessary toolkits for them to use more widely. And not only we are not alone with this pandemic, and you can always speak to other colleagues, other countries who are doing a good practices. Maybe there could be failures, so you just learn from those mistakes, and those are tried and tested. So it's a matter of acquiring best practices and customizing to your organization to ensure we can enhance these practices even more a sustainable way. Yeah, that's the message I want to give here. We can move to next slide. So this is again what recovery and pre-existing practice need to be changed.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, please.
So yeah, what a pre-existing practice we need to be changed to be more inclusive and sustainable recovery. And I personally, actually, our group noticed that with this COVID guidelines, adequate ventilation is the key message. Always, it's been circulated. So people are going overboard on that. And unlike the public institute, of course, public also been mechanically ventilated with the HVAC systems, but mainly the private sector relying on air conditioning environment. So you add ventilation into the building, more fresh air into the building, you are heating the building and the cooling requirement going up. So from the energy point of view, it's not sustainable. So what you can do is always you keep it at an optimum level and study what is the adequate ventilation, what is the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide level, whether you all have adequate HEPA filters there. So then with these elements, you can control heat air coming into the building unnecessarily. So that's something we want to highlight. And the other one is the excessive use of PPEs. Now, before pandemic, you would notice that the solid waste management is one of the biggest issue Sri Lanka has been facing. And with this PPE and all sort of gloves, mask usage, high usage, this has had even more disastrous situation for the country, which we are not even bothered to look into because the hygiene or personal hygiene is a key element at this stage. So people are not focusing much on solid waste management practices, but you would notice that per person how many masks being thrown into the dustbin. And from the municipal council, after collecting, what they are doing, are they incinerating, are they properly disposing, or just landfilling? We don't know. So it's very important that we put more focus around this area. Don't unnecessarily use PPEs. You can preserve it. And then other one is the misuse of hybrid working arrangement. So this is another perspective we want to highlight. Even though the hybrid working is encouraged, just imagine there's a high level meeting required, 4 members need to come and 3 members were able to come to office, 1 member couldn't. So because of hybrid working and restrictions, bit hesitant to come, that person doesn't want to take a risk. So what will happen to that meeting? 3 in, 1 out. Is it a lot of from the management point of view? It's a big problem to create have 1 person connected via virtually.
Hello, Ashik.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next.
Yeah, I have moved. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, any questions?
Can you see
Yeah,
it?
sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from the coronavirus disease and pandemic. So, so basically, whatever we say, benefits or the approach, it's not only focusing on individual or the one say state or one sector. It's benefiting entire communities and all countries. What we want to see is benefits are there. We can't have a single stop shop solution for everything, but the key idea any industry can take and then customize to ensure they reap maximum benefit out of these solutions. So that's the message we want to deliver here. Then achieving sustainable inclusive recovery, yeah, so create better performance. The other question, how can we create a better performing industry and supply chain for a just transition to more sustainable economies? So basically, how we can create a better performing in that, that post pandemic there are industries who perform really well, and some of the industries they couldn't even survive. So how as an industry we can grow together, and the industry that really grown up is one is the IT sector, telecommunication and ICT, I would say, and then health sector. And so those are the two industries that really grown up, and due to, especially with the pandemic. And how other industry can work, if you take an example of e-commerce based industry, Amazon or eBay, Alibaba, so those industries, they've been there, they foresee this risk in advance because they have a learning culture within their organization. So thankfully we have some organizations who are running online platforms. So even known brands like Singer, Abans, they are also now doing all sort of e-commerce platforms. So these are the good learning culture examples. So other organization also should see the way of doing the business how they can meet the customers, how they can do the service without physically presence there, because there could be challenging times can come in any form. So that's important, creating a learning culture. And also recognizing the better performance. Like now, even though some organizations working hard, and we don't know actually how they succeeded, and what sort of method they approach. So it's important that the comms element, the media should cover, and media should step up and do some programs to highlight those success stories for others to have some knowledge. And the easy access to finance, as we are not self self-managed country. We also import a lot of materials, but with the shortage of reserves, especially with the pandemic, put a lot of stress on those SMEs. And the finance element, the foreign currency is a key here. So alliance with those companies, and rather than having to source everything as one company, just align with the foreign company who can manage the foreign imports aspects, and locally the manufacturer can do the assemble and installation part. So some sort of hybrid approach, integration approach should be the focus way forward. Thanks. So we can move to another next slide.
Yeah, this is the next slide, Ashik.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so here how we create a better performing industry and supply chain. So this is again, I highlighted some of the things in the previous slide as well. Anything I want to highlight here? So the innovation facilitating so yeah, so almost same in line what I mentioned in the previous slide. If you all
Okay.
have any questions, you can ask. Yeah, so sorry, I'm going so fast because I want to leave some time for others also to chip in, because
Okay.
yeah. So post pandemic, or rather COVID-19 pandemic, which industry sectors are most critical? So of course the health industry, because we are in a post pandemic era, and the health is always vital here. So from the sustainable energy point of view, it's important to calculate the embedded energy these industries doing it, from the from raw material extraction to the disposal. Another one is the agriculture. Of course, the food supply is very minimal these days, and a lot of imports been happening. So distribution aspects, a lot of fuels being burned, so carbon emission is quite high. So this is another area. And then the tourism, one of the high forex earner for the country. So we have to holistically see how much of energy being demand after COVID pandemic, because to run a hotel or hospital or facilities, even though less occupancy, you can't shut down one part and reopen. There are overheads to manage, and that itself will lead to a lot of wastages. So how we going to optimize this area is a key here. And then other important one is high GHG emission, carbon emission manufacturing industry like cement, steel, etc. So these are the high emitters in Sri Lanka. So we have to have a controlling mechanism and see after post pandemic how best we could manage this industry. And of course the final one is the energy industry. This is not related to the pandemic, but our group thought with the power crisis in the country along with the pandemic, this is another industry where we should give more focus on and encourage renewable energy aspect in Sri Lanka. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, then the next question: what are some of the commitments and responsible principles that need to be made by key industry sectors? So we haven't had much time to go into detail. So we identified the three key industries. One is health and the tourism, and another one is apparel and the renewable industry. So these are the four drivers we actually considered. The health industry was considered mainly. They should have a policy to manage medicines and the drugs, and there are non-communicable diseases are there, and not only the COVID. So how are we going to manage? How are we going to store our drugs? How are we going to disseminate? Because there are reports circulated, a lot of being destroyed because expired. So those all required energy to manufacture. So we don't want to wastage. Then the tourism industry also another area. If you can have a better system to calculate your carbon emission, there are European or maybe foreigners who love to come to hotels to have a witness hospitality. If they can declare, okay, this is a carbon neutral hotel, and this is a carbon, maybe this is the amount I'm burning, so I can recover from by doing this. So these are very good practice to attract more people in. And then the apparel industry, of course, you need to have systems in place, all the green standards in place to have exports, because those are mandatory requirements. So with that, this apparel industry anyway will follow. But SMEs, apparel SMEs need to step up and show the potential too. Then the renewable energy, yes, it's a government commitment also there, and COP26 also part of that, signed around UN. So again, renewable energy is another key, and with this, hopefully, government can drive few initiatives to make sure each and every domestic level people are managing their own energy with this solar and hot water renewable system. Yeah. Yeah. So almost same thing I discussed there itself. Yeah. This is a question actually explaining how these sectors are quite important. So I touched upon the same thing in the previous slide itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are the decent green jobs of the future? So yeah, so ICT, yes, you can't do anything without telecommunication and IT industry. And with this, how they are going to have a green environment? uh, Green jobs, there will be more green jobs. We can work from home. You can earn in foreign currencies already there now, and that is one. And the agriculture also another area we thought, okay, now we can't do agriculture how we've been doing in the past. With all these constraints, uh, we have to come up with a plan how best we could do with this agriculture element. And then the renewable energy, of course. Yes.
New skills.
Yeah, so new skills needed. What is needed from, yeah, so this ICT sector, basically looking into future, not contemporary issues. Yes, they are observing the contemporary issues and developing models to overcome future uncertainties. For that, a lot of youngsters chipping into this, and their education system itself is governing those ICT elements. Whereas nowadays, the computer, how to use a keyboard, how to mouse being taught during our school time. Now it's completely different. All the codings itself being taught in the school level. So this is another area to explore, and that will help to grow this ICT sector as well. And the agriculture sector is precision agriculture. So there are not enough data here to understand which went well, which went wrong, and to develop database. And it's important to do some research around this area to have known knowledge freely available for everybody to learn and expedite. And renewable energy, yes, now the solar energy is very important. The people are quite moving into have solars installed around their roof or maybe workplace. But there's another risk involved there, which nobody's involved in, the fire risk. Because those knowledge is very important. Even though all the things showing a good benefit, there are negatives as well. So you have to identify every aspects of the solar energy, and then come up with a plan to better manage the situation. If I have a time, yeah, okay, I'll move to next one. uh, so specific question for all this. This is the last question, I believe. So what is the follow-up activity we would like to see from Stockholm+50 program? So one is the monitoring and evaluation. Yes, we've been proposing many qualitative recommendation, I would say, rather than quantified version of recommendation. So you need to further develop and evaluate and see how best practically we can implement this, and giving the feedback to the participants or the key stakeholders are key, because there's a more chance people are getting inputs from all these experts, and then finally we don't know what was the result at the end. And we don't know whether the input that we given was useful or not. So it's very important to capitalize on that. And then it's important, as I said, it's a qualitative measures being proposed, and it's important to select one theme, one recommendation, and do a pilot project, and then we have a one real model in front of our eyes to witness, okay, this is working now, so others can replicate it. So that's very important. Yes, thank you very much. If you all have any questions, yeah, floor is open.
So thank you very much, Jasik. Now is the time for other two groups to add to this, make suggestions, the changes required. We can spend few minutes. Maybe we can move to the next group since there are no comments from other two groups.
Thank you. And we've had 4 in the group 1, looking at reflecting on the urgent need for action to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity of all. And Dr. Nishanti coordinated the group work, and she indicated that she's having some connectivity issues. Let me ask her again. Dr. Nishanti, are you okay to make the presentation?
No, Shaman, it's not possible because I cannot see the screen properly. So
right, okay, right. And will there be anyone else who want to make the presentation from the group? And I know 2 of them had to leave while the other presentation was taking place. Mr. Senaka, is it all right if I just do the presentation as the...
Yes, please, Dr.
Okay. Yeah. So this is all what they have discussed. There was a rich discussion, and I have taken the notes, and this is what we have to present. And so the question 1 about the good practices and pathways for us to achieve towards the healthy planet objective. So there were 3 good practices suggested. The first one was promote renewable energy. Then the second one was conservation of critical habitats. And the third one, proper management of waste. And there were 3 broad areas identified which are applicable to all 3. And probably some of these may apply to subsequent question as well. So as it goes, long-term national policy for the country is something very much needed. Then all sectoral policies to be aligned with national physical plan and the policy. Then the established link between National Planning Department and National Physical Planning Department together with sectoral ministries and their line agencies. So the discussion was highlighting the need for such integration because we have sectoral policies, large numbers coming from different sectors, and you have the National Physical Planning Department, and then the resources are not flowing, and the National Physical Planning Department and National Planning Department, there's a lack of such integration. So this was proposed to solve issues that we are having. So these 3 were common to all 3 good practices suggested, plus for specifically for waste management, promotion of 7R was suggested. Then on the second question, what are the actions that you would like to scale up to change towards the healthy planet? So under which 2 actions due to time limitation they have selected. The first one is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Then the conservation of critical habitats, including watersheds and wetlands. Under them, the policies for the greenhouse gas emission reduction was reasonable feeding tariff for solar. So they were highlighting the disparity between different sources of energy. So in order to promote, so this is coming from the best practice promotion of renewable energy. So it would not work well unless these tariffs are re-looked at and make them more appropriate. In the promoting public transport and promote walkability, cycling lanes, promoting e-mobility were things discussed under policies. Then for the conservation and knowing the present financial constraints that the country is facing, it was suggested to reconsider these. There in 1990s, the debt for nature swaps to be reconsidered for conservation initiatives and mitigation of climate change. And there again, we have structures proposed. They are also common: legal provisions, mandated agencies, regulation, and circulars. So again, it was discussed in detail that the policies and various other strategies are there, but unfortunately things are not happening at the local level. Therefore, you need little bit further, like having right kind of circulars where the local level officials would be implementing them, taking guidance from such. Then they address policy inconsistencies and policy incoherences wherever they have, and they were looking at things like the CB as well as the national renewable energy related other commitments and mismatches between long-term generation as well as the commitments to UNFCCC. Those things were highlighted as. Then question number 3, how could marginalized and vulnerable groups benefit from these policies? The first one, to have targeted financial support to vulnerable groups. Then things such as public transport, walkability as modes of transport will help the vulnerable groups. Then promotion of good agricultural practices and sustainable livelihoods also for such marginalized and vulnerable groups. Then the disaster risk and pollution related impact reduction also would be, in many cases, they also would be the beneficiaries, especially those who are living next to water bodies will get affected with the natural disaster related events. Then on question number 4, how can we safeguard the nature and people? So broadly looking at these initiatives with respect to people and nature. The first one, planning with the people and planning for people. So this is something lacking in most of the areas, so which was proposed as one of the most required things to be done. Then environmental litigation, we know in many areas these things are not taking place. Then awareness raising, education and attitudinal changes also would be helpful in seeing that the initiatives with safeguards. Then on the 5th question, what are the new or prioritized sets of metrics and indicators? So under which we have a few listed due to time constraint, number of legal actions taken on various aspects of environmental violations, then number of contributions of renewable to total energy generation, percentage change in people affected with natural disasters, percentage of organic waste composted, reduction of amount of waste generated, extent of protected areas per total land area, were few things suggested. Then follow-up activities from Stockholm+50. The first 2 are for global level. The first one is sharing of best practices, technology and financial assistance to developing countries, basically to learn from others towards addressing the issues the countries are facing. Then linkages to different conventions. We know there are so many such global conventions and needs to see how these are interlinked. Then last 2 are more for local consumption. Communication of findings with all concerned. Sometimes there's a major gap in not having the right level of communication where certain people or the segments of the society are not aware of these things. Then most important thing, the implementation of recommendations at all levels. In the morning discussion also, it was highlighted that we have very well documented strategies, action plans, but their level of implementation is very much less. So that was highlighted even for follow-up actions from Stockholm+50. So this is what we have from the group one. If the members of the group one wants to say anything that I missed or not presented right, please feel free to come in.
I mean, one thing our group came to a conclusion was that the overarching strategy or the policy of the country should be the national physical plan and the policy. And that should be, not, with the changing of governments or anything, shouldn't be changed, but should stay for some time. And under that policy and plan, all the other sectoral policies and everything should come into line. So that was one of our major things that we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishanti. Okay, I think with that we can open this for any inputs, feedback from the other two groups. Thank you. Maybe we can move to the third presentation, Dr. Sugatapala.
Yes, yeah. Allow me to share the response first. Yeah, we discussed these questions, and unfortunately, we were able to only cover 5 questions. The 6th and common question, we didn't have time. But I think we have very comprehensive discussion with all the areas. So I will request Engineer Parakama Jayasinghe to come in and then present on behalf of the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Tusita, you'll have to do the...
Yes, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Now, well, the implementation, accelerating. This is the first question.
Yeah, this is the one for the what are the biggest challenges.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Okay. So I will not bother to read the question as such. So biggest challenges. So we understood the implementation programs and these actions have to be passed on to, right, I mentioned right at the beginning that mandate and responsibility has to pass on to the people who are implementing it. Having policies and strategies, as just a document is of no value unless it is passed on as actionable items and with the responsibility passed on. That is the biggest challenge. How do we do that? Now, there is also a lack of procedure how to do that. How do you transfer this one? Because unless you have that one and policies being considered as national policies which are accepted and bought into by everybody, this procedure will not work. It cannot work just as a sort of official transfer, but it must also be accepted and people must buy into it. So this is a procedure which is lacking and needs to be corrected very early if we have to move forward. Now, other thing is these things have to be worked in a holistic manner, because whatever you do has linkages to various other sectors. Now, what we talked about, the two groups talked about. So understanding of that holistic nature of anything what you do, and that must be integrated into common policies. And that again must be filtered down to the various institutional policies also, and to make sure there's coherence and consistency of whatever you decide to do, and to each institution when it does something knows that it fits in the big picture. Now, there is also no procedure for appraisal of sustainability and methodologies of what we are doing. You see, particularly many people don't even appreciate the importance of triple bottom line. And of course, the question comes in of inadequate data and quality of data. But leaving that aside, even if the primary importance of looking at anything that you do with the concept of triple bottom line, unless that is understood, it can't move forward any further. So that is a sort of challenge to be overcome. And very definitely we see inadequate stakeholder mobilization, consultation, empowerment, and all that sort of thing at the right time. It should be done in time so that before a project is implemented, any corrective action can be taken. And particularly, the people who are expected to be benefited from the project must be brought into the picture right at the beginning. You see, now this kind of practice were there in the olden days, but it has all gone out of practice. And you hear of various projects dreamt up by somebody. We get to know it only after it has passed through and various agreements are signed and that kind of thing. That can't happen. So we must have a corrective measure on that one. So move on, sister.
Yeah, the enabling environment for those challenges.
Right. Now, how do you make that happen? You see, very easy to identify challenges, but how do you make it happen? So one of the first things is that all these policies has to be national policies which are accepted by all sectors, and it must get integrated into the lower level of various ministries, departments, institutions, and whatever agencies, and down to even the private sector, because they can't have anything be going on which are outside the national policies. So that is the very important thing to do. Then some of the other things will fall in place. Therefore, each program should incorporate the respective elements of national policies and subjected to evaluation. Now, that's where, again, I think Shamin mentioned about this national planning department and all that. What is their role? You see, we think either they themselves are in the present state or there are some other institution must be there as an apex body to be able to monitor and also check right at the beginning the compliance with the national policies on one hand, and later on some kind of monitoring to be done, for which that agency is there. You have to identify who's going to do that one with the adequate authority, and then what shall I say, recognition given to the role to be played by that one, because that's the only way that this holistic nature can be brought in, because different people will be looking at their own narrow sphere of activity only, right? Yeah, now again, somewhat we are saying the same thing in the different words. All national policies are within the overarching framework, so that there is a coherence in what we do. So these two perhaps can be put together into one. Then, yeah, again, we are going back to what we mentioned earlier as a lack is programs must consider the triple bottom line, and it should be there as a mandatory requirement. For instance, if we are putting up a project proposal, element has to be there to say how it complies with the triple bottom line concept, and provide adequate data for, if you go for a stakeholder consultation, somebody can look at it and say, no, you are right, or you are not addressing it properly, right? Again, the question comes in, have you got enough data to do that one? That's a separate question. Then we need a very aggressive program to create awareness among stakeholders. You can ask for stakeholder consultation, but people who do come or who care to come must be adequately educated on the way different aspects to be looked at. You see, you don't have to be expert to be on the subject, but they should see how it's going to impact on the things like economic, environmental, social, and including health, like Dr. mentioned in the beginning. So that awareness of people is very important. And also that also goes a little beyond to say that you are right to be able to comment. Therefore, people will get interested in becoming aware. So, but then there must be some procedure to make that happen. Now again, it must go down to the ground level communities and people, because they are the final beneficiaries or the victims of the wrong decisions or wrong development plans. So therefore, they also must be able to understand. You see a little bit of this happening in the TV or something like that, people complain, but usually that happens too late. That should have happened before anything is allowed to happen. Now, this is the most important thing. Okay, sister.
Next one, looking at this good practices and pathways.
Yeah, okay. We think the present environment regulations, IEE, EIE, and EPL are very good practices. But of course, we'll have to look at how well they are implemented and how effective they are. So we have said that the guidelines has to be there for compliance with those things, and therefore facilitation must happen before enforcement by the authority. Basically, we are talking about CEA. CEA has a role of facilitation rather than being a policeman. So they'll have developed those guidelines. For instance, if the guidelines are clear enough, when somebody prepares an EIA, if he's in compliance, he knows that he will have to pass. You see, that must be clear enough, rather than having to go back and saying that you are not in compliance. That sort of thing, and it must be made as simple as possible. Again, once more, I go back to what I mentioned before. Now we give a 1 month notice for people to complain or comment on the EIAs. Now, how many people can do that one? Because how many people are aware of what they should be looking at? And also we are also seeing that you get 500-page EIA document to be commented within 1 month. So it's not going to happen. So we must make that system so that the most relevant things are highlighted and people can look at that very carefully and very easily in a user-friendly manner. That unless you do that one, the good practice of no value, right? And also as a follow-up, of course, okay, you do EIA and then you approve the project and there's an EPL. What's the value of the EPL if you are not making sure that it is complied with? There must be legal procedures and very impartial way of making sure that it is implemented. The legal, this was also mentioned in earlier slide also, I think by Shamin or somebody. These are very essential. Unless that is there is something of a stick, but that is necessary to get the total value of the present good practices. So that is very important. And also we want to say that this process must be done in a very independent way and impartial way, so that people who are making it can look at the project very impartially without any need to be serving the needs of the developer or somebody else. So that is very, very important. And transparency of that one is what is required. So for that to happen, simplification of the feedback procedure is very, very essential, right? Then stakeholder consultation procedure. This is what we think is one of the most important aspects, and we note that PUCSL is practicing this, right? But good thing is that they are mandated to do it by the Electricity Act itself. So that practice must go on to other acts also, where it is made mandatory. You see, at whatever level that is required. And then we must make sure that the stakeholders can take part in that process. And also, again, you must make sure that whatever procedures you put in are simple enough, user-friendly. So adequate number of correct stakeholders can participate. You see, not just for the sake of saying that we had the stakeholder consultation, 10 people came and commented. That's not good enough. And also the thing is, one good practice that the PUCS adopts is whatever presentation you make are made public. It is available in their web. You see, what we have said is there for anybody else to look at even later on. So that's one. And then now there is also this I think the Ministry of Environment has brought this one into one of the environmental acts also. Extended procedure producer responsibility. How do you dispose of it? You see, your production must also have the procedure to make sure that the end of life disposal is also looked at. That also had to be made mandatory. I think, remember, I visited some of the European countries with a group from the Ministry of Environment 15 years ago, maybe. We talked about it at that time. I think even after 15 years, we have not been able to implement any part of it. That's why it causes all our waste problems, right? So again, we must make it mandatory, and also we have to have a the system monitoring and enforcement. I must also not written here, I must add, change that the value of that one also must be made known to the people so that people will buy into it rather than be forced to do that one. So that kind of situation, that again all comes back to awareness creation and also wider acceptance of the value of the SDGs. You see, each step of the SDG implemented properly has value to the people who are doing it. It's not a burden. That awareness is very little these days. So it's considered as something, you know, put on you as a further problem, further barrier. That should not be the case. People must understand SDGs have been well considered and they are brought in because that gives you value, not in a sort of big macro level for the planet or something. That is, they are of value to you yourself, your business itself. So that is something we have not written there, but I thought I should mention that one as a pathway. What's next?
That's on the how to transform the governance system.
Yes, yes. It all boils down to that part. Unless we have the governance system, we can propose all manner of things, but nothing is going to happen. So one of the primary requirements is this apex body. From how do we use what we have, or do we have to create a different one, or you have to change the authority levels or whatever it is, and that is very essential. None of the other things is going to work if you are left it for individual ministries and organizations or somebody's whims to do projects without consideration of any of these negative impact. Negative could be positive too, but somebody may have to be looking at it in a holistic manner because everything is connected. You can't do anything without it having impact on something else. Primarily, everything has an impact on climate change too, right? So that is one of the primary things of governance that we have to do. Yeah, and again, as a next step, of course, whatever the policies and things like that we develop must filter down to the agencies on a national and subnational level. You can't have the national level awareness of implementation, one way of doing it, and when it goes to subnational levels, the Provincial Council or the Pradesh Sabha or something, they interpret it in a different way, do something else. That can't happen. So there must be that coherence must happen. I know how do you build that one up is the challenge, how to set that going. Yeah, then again, the mandatory compliance. When you have a policy, it has to be mandatory. It can't be just something put out by the Ministry of Environment and just lying there. It must be mandatory for compliance and implementation at all levels, down to the even individuals, not the government agencies, but private sector, companies, and also groups of individuals who do things. They have to comply with that, you see. So awareness is important for that one, but on the other hand, there must be a governance to make sure that you are not allowed to do that one because you impact other people's rights by doing the wrong thing. Yeah, again, when the stakeholders are empowered to do that one, these things become more easy because they know that affects them. You see, then there is a common sort of need and agreement to comply because it affects you. So therefore, this stakeholder empowerment and decision making is very important. So that's why I said at the beginning also that procedure must be enacted. Now, what is being done by PUCSL is not adequate. It must be expanded to all other agencies too, right? Yeah, what's next?
Next one is the legal system, align with the, you know.
Yeah. So what was said as a governance, of course, will not happen unless we have the legal system to go along with that. So we'll have to examine what the existing laws or new laws to be brought in to implement the governance system that is proposed. If it is considered doable and is good, then you must have the legal system to support it. Without that one, nothing is going to happen. Then more than anything, as you know, we all complain about our legal system, particularly the delays. So that sometimes when it's not done in the right time, too late to do anything, the damage is done. So it must be very clear and rapid to correct any non-compliance by any relevant party. So the legal system must be very clear on that one. And definitely the fact that there are problems of, there are how many lakhs of cases standing by can't be accepted. Into will be far too late to make any correction. And also, you don't, like I mentioned about the EIA documents, it can't be such a convoluted kind of things for ordinary people to even to look at and understand. So you have to make sure they are simple enough. I don't see any reason that why that can't be done. Maybe the lawyers in the group might come in, but it has to be that. Otherwise, no, what's the point? You see, you have all kinds of laws, but then nobody can understand it. You know, the litigants will go there and listen to and say, will not understand the thing. That kind of thing can't happen. So this is affecting all of us. Unless we do that, when all of us sink. Therefore, we'll have to make sure things are done to keep in that primary objective in mind, rather than how things are done now, who are the people involved in it, that sort of thing. That does not matter. We have to make those corrections to make sure the final objective is met, and we move towards that. And after all, legal system is an essential part to do that. Okay, that's all we got, I think.
There are two more questions. Yeah, the measures needed to align this PPP model, like public, private, and development finance.
Align public-private development finance. Right. So we highlighted this triple bottom line thing. That is the one, that's the best way of buying people's loyalty to these things, because that would show it is worthwhile for them to do that. Right. So this is getting that in place is the most important thing. And when you do that one, it goes to the next level also. You see, what is the best way of making sure you can do that, achieve that objective or triple bottom line? You might find that trying to do it entirely on your own, you have no way of doing it. But whereas a partnership with the right party will definitely help you to do that one. So therefore, what is always talked about now, the PPP model, it has a lot of positives, so that people must accept that one, because that's a way forward. That's a better way forward. And how you decide to do that one, how you think that is the best way of doing it, is by checking the first priority. You see, how are you getting along with that? Are you getting progress? Looking at it in a holistic manner, you can be sure that you will pass the apex body's evaluation. Now, all those things keeping in mind, you might find that going for a PPP might be the better solution. Not always. Sometimes you might even say, no, I'm not going to do it. It's not a PPP. Let somebody who's more competent to do that handle it. You see, that decision could also happen. Now, again, when we are talking about PPPs, there must be a good set of guidelines. What do we mean? Because we are going to bring in the public sector. So therefore, you are obliged to make sure that or whatever the legal guidelines and everything are complied with. It's not like a partnership between two private parties or two individuals. So therefore, the guidelines are very necessary, because PPP is recognized as a way forward. So for that to be accelerated and adopted, you will provide that guidelines. So then, of course, how do you strengthen this partnerships between state agencies, or between PPP partners, or even between partners in the private sector or community agencies? So that those needs to be done. All will be doable and successful only if there's correct awareness of the value of it, which is what we are all talking about.
What is highlighted there, Parakam, is that private sector doesn't have much opportunity to approach development.
Yes. You see, they can't initiate it. They can't initiate it. You see, it has to come down from top, which is wrong. So, like I mentioned, if the best way of doing it is by a PPP, somebody in the private sector also would say that, no, I would like to do that one, but I need the partnership with the state agency. So they should be able to initiate it. Isn't that right, sister? So that's what we meant by strengthening of the partnership.
Yes. Yeah. This is the last question we were able to answer. So give me.
Okay. Very primarily, technical assistance for appraisal of the projects for compliance with the national policies and the triple bottom line. A lot of people will not know or will have the ability to do this test. So some help on that one is the primary thing we would be looking at. And also the fact of right now at the present circumstances, more than ever, financing is a big problem. We know that there are a lot of climate finance that is available. Unfortunately, we are not be able to access it. Particularly, it's practically impossible for the private sector to do that. So, but we need some support to get that going, not only the government sector, but for the private sector also. As you know, more and more projects will have to be done by private sector. So they need that financing help. Yeah, then again, a sad situation is where all kinds of aid projects or grants or whatever it is come from abroad, but most of it just goes back because the participation in the local partners or local agencies is very minimal. We don't want that to happen because a project, value of a project is not just the outcome of that particular project only, but much more the spin-off benefits of increasing our capabilities, our facilities, our capital accumulation, all that kind of thing. So that must become one of the priority considerations in formulating aided project or development project coming from abroad. That must be made mandatory. Actually, if our government has any sense, they'll put that as a thing, either that or we don't want it. You see, India does that one. We have never done that, and we see very large amounts of money has been spent on projects. To end of it, they have nothing to show for it except, some concrete and dams or something like that. That must happen. That is something very mandatory that must be made for all future projects. That's our request for it. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yes, these are the questions answered by our group. Thank you very much, Engineer Parakrama Jayasinghe, for presenting. Again, it's open for other groups to comment on those 5 questions. Thank you. We have now passed the time.
I'm afraid I will also have to leave in about 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. There's no comments from others. Probably I will hand over to.
One comment. I mean, with the EIA and IPC, the strategic environment assessment also should be included.
Yeah. Here, no. Yes. Strategic environment assessment within the EIA, Yeah. Okay.
Say that again, Sir.
Strategic environment assessment.
Yeah.
Under environmental regulation, strategic environment assessment. Apart from this EIA and EPL. Yeah, thank you. I'm just adding that one. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. So I will hand over to the Sugandhi or Tevni to complete the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugatapala. Thank you everyone for engaging today. I would like to hand it over to Ms. Sugandhi Samarasinghe to give the vote of thanks.
Hello, Theoni. I'm sorry, I just lost my power connection and connected through my hotspot.
Of course.
Some announcement is given, or
yes,
I'm not sure what was happening just now.
Vote of thanks. Sorry, Sugandhi.
That is vote of thanks now.
Yeah. To conclude the session, Sugandhi. Yeah.
I think the connection might be a little bit bad.
We can hear you. You can continue the.
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not much sure you can hear me well.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. We can go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much. Actually, it was very interesting to hear all these valued thoughts and reflections all about these leadership dialogues. Actually, we have been hearing to a lot of participants in different categories so far, and this has been very interesting and actually very valuable. So that on behalf of Ministry of Environment and UNDP, we convey our sincere thanks to all of you, especially for joining with us through virtually in such a short notice, despite all challenges we are facing right now because of the present context. So that also thank you so much for staying this much of time with us. And then again, sincere thanks to Mr. Ashik and his team, Dr. Nishanti and her team, and then Engineer Parakram Jaisingh and his team for all these very engaging discussions and presenting the findings, and it will be very helpful for us to finalize the national report. So all these things would be reflected there in the national report very well, and you can keep engaged with us through the Spark Blue and give your comments further, so that it is a very productive day despite all the existing constraints. And we are really thankful to all of you. And then again, special thanks to our expert team, Engineer Gamini Senanayaka, Dr. Gamini Sugatapala, Dr. Shamin Vidanagi, and Dr. Manoj Ranavira for your expertise and moderating all the discussions. And finally, thanks to my team, Anuk and Theoni, for reaching all of you and making sure that most of the participants will be here, and for all the support in live streaming and everything. So thank you very much to all of you. Have a very nice day, and please keep the discussion with us, that we know that we are working with all of you and we are engaging with all of you.
Thank you, Sugandhi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost the connection. I'm not sure
Yeah, we can hear you,
you can
Sugandhi.
hear
Yes.
me, but I was thanking you and wishing you a very pleasant day. And so I was requesting finally to keep the discussion live through the Spark Blue and other streams, so then we can meet always, like we were discussing earlier, that as professional associations,